This session is not going to be a particularly long session. We're going to talk about a couple things that over the long weekend, this is if you're watching on a recording, we're coming out of the Memorial Day weekend, which is the unofficial start of summer. And so what's going on is what's been going on. We're still trading the health and now the fear, and then we'll start trading the economy. What do I mean by that? Well, at first, we're waiting for the hurricane to pass to see what kind of economic carnage it left behind with this coronavirus pandemic. And now, as we've kind of gotten a lot of information as to all there was that we didn't have a few months ago, and we're starting to get over the other side of the mountain, the fear is still there. What do I mean by fear? And it fits into what we're going to talk about in a second. But the fear in what we're going through right now is people going back into restaurants and going back into environments that you didn't think twice. You didn't think twice about in the past, and now we're thinking 2, 3, 4 times. So there is a temporary normal where that's going to remain until either time passes and there's no flare-ups and worry about people getting it or you getting it or too many people getting it, or a vaccine that seems to be sooner rather than later, or therapeutical drugs, or both. And every time you seem to look up a vaccine in this Operation Warp Speed, which I think politically was a great uh, program that the administration put on it, because they feel that when you take every biochemist in the world off of what they were doing and put them all on this, that the vaccine and the development of it and getting it to trial and getting it scaled happens sooner rather than later. And end of the year, now the fall, it seems like the market is pricing in that as well. We made it over 3,000 in the June contract. I want people to be aware that the bonds are going to roll first in the next week, treasuries, and then we'll have the stock indexes in a couple weeks as far as the rollover from June to Sep eventually. Now, I wanted to make this session brief because tomorrow we have, it was going to be today and encompass this session, but it's going to be tomorrow at 3:30 Central. If you're watching this on recording, it'll be up in the weekly coaching sessions or on the YouTube channel. But Anthony Credelli from Futures Trader Radio, CME sponsors that podcast. He's a longtime member of the CME group. He was one of the first E-mini traders. But without getting into that, that's going to be tomorrow, Wednesday at 3:30 Central. Wednesday the 7th, 3:30 Central. All right. And that's going to be what this session was going to be about. But I didn't want to leave this session on a blank. I wanted to do it, and I wanted to cover something that I thought about over the weekend, and then actually, probably no coincidence, happened to me in this session. And that is, and I think I discussed this, I know I discussed this in a one-on-one session I was doing with someone. I think I discussed this in a previous session, but I could repeat it 1,000 times and it would always be important each time. And that is, what I'm going to draw here are containers, or we could call them buckets. All right. And buckets are particular trade setups, strategies, ideas that you have, that I have to execute. One, I'm not saying is something that creates your bias and this one executes your bias and this one manages your risk. That's not what I'm talking about. Each one of these buckets or containers is an idea. And inside that bucket should be a bunch of trades. All right. And let's just speak generally. I'm not saying or getting into what the strategy or idea is, but it's the whole ready, aim, fire is in this bucket. The whole trade's in this bucket. I mean, you could dissect this all you want, and you should, but if you have 3 ideas that you like to trade, and you have a bunch of trades, and these X's are actual trades, I don't give an SHIT what your results are as far as your P&L. I mean, I do care about that, and you should care about that. But if I see 3 ideas, 3 buckets, and I see all the trades in those buckets, I'm really proud of this particular trader. They have accomplished a lot, that all their executions, all their trades are within what they wanted to do in the first place. Now, if you have trades laying outside the buckets and sometimes not even close to a bucket, those are your avenge trades. Those are your trades to try to get back a losing trade that was in the bucket. That was all kinds of reasons, all kinds of good, bad, and indifferent excuses to take a trade. And the reason why we do it, you would think it would be easy not to take a trade inside your bucket, but it's actually hard not to take a trade outside your bucket. And the reason why is because once in a while they work. Sometimes, maybe a lot in a particular sequence, they work. That's the hook. That's the addiction to taking trades outside your idea, outside your bucket in this example. And so I took 2 trades outside my bucket today, and both of them were losers. And I took them. One was actually within my bucket, but I didn't have the execution qualifier, but took it. So it was laying next to my bucket. It was close to the idea, and it was a loser. The other one was trying to force direction based on same situation outside the one element of the idea was missing, but I took it anyways. Had I not taken 2 trades I should not have taken, totally different outlook or totally different result on the session. It's okay when this happens. It's not okay if it, number 1, happens a lot, or number 2, happens and you don't even realize it, and that's even more dangerous. Think about that. When you're doing something that's dangerous and you don't even realize it, it's even more dangerous. You're juggling a circular saw. You're literally juggling knives and you don't even know how to juggle. And you don't realize how dangerous that is. You don't even know how to juggle, and you start by learning how to juggle with knives. That's taking trades outside your bucket and you don't even realize it. Oftentimes you blame the bucket, but you weren't even taking a trade inside of it. Again, a bucket is the entire idea, the ready, the aim, the fire. And everybody has different some people might have 1 bucket, some might have 100 buckets, which is way too many, obviously. That's not the point of this conversation. The point is, how many times do you take trades that you shouldn't have taken? Most people don't identify that. I'm identifying it as I do it, and that helps me prevent having it become habitual, and that's the difference. How often do you do it? Is it become a habit? Do you just do it in an aloof way because you get away with it, because you're allowed to get away with it, because of a lack of an accountability, which most people do not have? Most people listening to this session live, most people that are going to be listening to this session and recording in the future don't have the necessary accountability. You got to work on knowing how many trades you take inside or outside your bucket. Because if all your trades are inside a bucket, good for you. That's how you build confidence, because you're building consistency, because you're finally going to the gym every day when you said you're going to go to the gym every day. At the end of the week, you went to the gym every day you said you were going to go to the gym. Talk about momentum. Talk about being courageous. Are you going to see that you're in the best shape of your life after the first 5 days? Of course not. You're going to see differences or changes or results. But boy, you're building momentum to go the next 5 days and the next 5 days. And the next thing you know, at some point, you do see results. And it wasn't that day that you had a better workout that you see the great results. It's the combination of the 20 days that you worked out. Now it's noticeable. But if you're not having consistency with trades inside your bucket, you're not going to get to the point where you look in the mirror and you look as good as I do. It just won't happen. Humbly speaking. Most people don't know their buckets, let alone knowing if they're taking trades in or outside them. But boy, when you know your bucket and you don't take one, I actually feel better about my day when I know that, you know what, 2 trades I shouldn't have taken. You're a dumbass, but I'm actually more confident in what I'm doing. Just adhere to your idea. And there's a saying here that I actually put on this chart, and I've used it before. You don't have to be smart. You just can't be dumb. I often joke about different things, and that's all they are as a way to joke, but I'm smart enough to know that I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So you don't have to be smart. Very smart people are not good at trading. You just can't be dumb. You just can't be inconsistent. You can't just continue to do things that you know aren't part of what you set out to do. It's like, well, I didn't have my fire, my ready aim fire. Well, then what are you shooting for? And I had the breakout. And then what happens is you actually miss a trade. Because you take a trade outside your bucket, you're more inclined to miss one that falls within your bucket. So how does that work? You got one trade, and because you took that one trade, it eliminated the second trade. And the second trade was the one you were supposed to take. How often does that happen? A lot. How often does it happen? You don't even realize it. A lot. So part of education and community in this business is to get people in a position of being aware ASAP. Focused on what you're missing, because if you miss what you're missing, you're really in trouble. If you miss what you're missing, then you don't have a chance to fix it. Let's go and talk about really quick the let's get rid of this a second. Let's talk about today, because it was a real interesting day, and it wasn't. Almost spilled coffee all over the monitor. That would not have been good. Today was an interesting session because it wasn't. It had direction, and it had magnets, but it often had magnets for me on both sides of price. And I talked about something that's really important when you're looking at patterns. If you're just looking for patterns to create your opinion, you might not be consistent. But if you let patterns help execute your opinion, you might find a lot more use of the pattern. You got that? If you're using a pattern to create your opinion, that's one thing. If you're using it to help execute your opinion, you might find a lot more use of the pattern. You have to have the appropriate pattern. You have to understand why it's distinguishing bullish or bearish biases. But when you see a breakout potentially below this consolidation that we had all throughout here for like a 45-minute period, and we talked about there's going to be a winner of this fight. You know, when you have a long consolidation, there's going to be a winner. And Kudlow created the kickoff. It wasn't that he had a 10-point bearish comment. I mean, it actually went 14 points lower. It wasn't that his comment was that bearish at all. It was that it just kicked the stone and it rolled down one step, and then there was another step, and then there was another step, and then the stone ends up being at the bottom of the steps. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't kick down all the steps. It just got momentum and gravity took over. It got through an area and the longs just end up puke, 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 puke. And it went down to where everybody thought they were going to lean on and get long. And that's the same. And that's a big reason why it became a magnet. That makes sense? There's no coincidence it went down here. We talked about this all morning. The key was getting on the team for the move down there. Then there was good qualifiers to get your ASS long if you were bullish or thinking that was going to hold the support. Not only did you have a target that was met, but you had sell side icebergs that quickly got filled. So it's a 1-2 punch, guys, when reading order flow. It's being able to identify it, and it's being able to ask the right questions once you identify it. All the stuff that we bring together, where you're at on the map. Let me draw a circle. What does it mean? Recognizing it, patterns, fundamentals. It doesn't have to be a million things. They all just have to be practical. The fear of missing out is a important element. Also, someone had mentioned that today as a reason why they didn't trade well. That forces you to do what? Oftentimes, take a trade outside your bucket. Too early, too late. You take a trade, it's a loser. Then you would have had a trade in here, but because you took this trade, you didn't take that trade. Took the loser, missed the winner. Happens too often. You got to catch it because it's going to happen. But how often does it happen? And how often are you privy to it? You know what it's like? A great analogy. You don't realize how often you touch your face until someone tells you the average person touches their face how many times? You never would have thought. It's hundreds of times a day. You're unaware of it. And so when it's dangerous to do it, when all these germs were around a couple months ago and everybody was worried for good reasons a couple, 3 months ago, then you realized maybe more or less how often you did it. And if it was dangerous and you didn't realize it, it's even more dangerous. And that's the point of taking trades outside what you scheduled yourself to do. The last thing I'll leave you with is going back to the do what you say you're going to do. And I talked about this a few months ago. It's one thing not to do what you say you're going to do. It's another thing to do the opposite. So if you say you're going to go work out and you didn't, and then you ate a bunch of chocolate cake that day, you not only didn't do what you said you were going to do, you did the opposite of trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve, and that is getting in better shape. All right, fine, you didn't work out. But did you have to eat 3 pounds of pasta? To build momentum, you got to start doing what you say you're going to do. It's that simple. It's not easy, but it's easier when you're cognitive of it. Right here, you see a bunch of stops that came out. We're looking at this third vertical. Anytime you see generally a third line, we're testing something. I don't want to get into too much of what it is, but watch the puke videos for the far right and the middle, what becomes the middle verticals on the puke tool that you're looking at. But that was the basis of today. If you're all beat up, it's hard to take risk. And you get beat up oftentimes by taking trades you shouldn't have taken in the first place. So hopefully that helps. You guys should receive an email. I'm talking to people watching this live. You should receive an email tonight, at the latest tomorrow, or maybe both, with access. It's going to be a different link to go into the Credelli event tomorrow, Wednesday, May 27th, 3:30 Central. If you don't get it, come to the room tomorrow and I'll ship it off to you. Have a safe rest of the session, guys. Don't fight the market either way. It could go from fast to slow. That's just the environment we're in. And forget about summer markets. We're going to have a little bit of everything this summer. I will record tomorrow's session, yes. So if you don't make it, sign up for it when you see the link, but I will record it for you guys. If you don't do what you say you're going to do, at least don't do the opposite. I'll leave you with that.